Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and also Honourable Grand Rectifier, and also strict timekeeper, we've been told. We are Nude, and that's not literally, which you'll be very pleased to note. In fact, we are a design agency specialising in branding and packaging in the premium sector. But we're not here today to sell you our services, nor are we here to necessarily showcase our work. We are here because we love working on spirits, and we have a passion for the stories behind the brands, and in some cases of actually creating the stories itself. And today we're going to share one of those stories with you. So this is a story about designing for a new gin. But more than that, it's a story about time. It's about creativity, about crafting, and about how ideas come to life. As a design agency, we regularly receive design briefs from our clients for branding and packaging their products, who range from very small startups, entrepreneurs, and the largest multinationals. So the following is a slight caricature, but there's certainly an element of truth in it.
Sorry, put on my best client voice. Our spirit is made from water, sourced from the high streams of the Andes, and 10 unique botanicals sourced from the farthest reaches of the world. It has taken our master blender years of experimentation, trial and error to perfect. It is distilled once, two times, 3 times. It has been a huge undertaking, and now we are ready for it to be named, packaged, and ready for launch. Right, you have 2 weeks to design it.
We think spirit brands are special. Every spirit is, literally and figuratively, the distilled essence of a place, of its unique climate, of its geography, of a specific culture, and of its people, that all contribute to making a brand totally individual. The brand you create should be every bit as complex, subtle, and as distinctive as the product itself. We must inhale brands, just roll them around the palate and give them time to fill our senses. Brands are special. They live and are a part of our fabric, our everyday. Our contention is that you need to treat your brand in exactly the same way you treat your product, with care and with reverence. However, this is not a brand. It's a product. The brand is a sum total of all the connections this product, its design, and all of its communication have ever made. The brand lives in history, time, space, and culture. It owns legends, old and new. The brand is actually an abstraction, but no less real. It deserves to be dealt with in its own right, and it needs to be articulated properly.
And this is not a creative brief, it's just a few words on a page. Often the same words. Authentic, timeless, contemporary classic is a favourite. Masculine, but don't alienate our female consumers. Language is an amazing instrument, allowing us to transplant incredibly complex ideas into each other's brains in a matter of moments. But sometimes it gets in the way. Words like authentic or masculine sound fine, but mean nothing. We shouldn't think of a brief as a piece of A4 paper, rather as a kind of extended date, an invitation to immerse in something special and uncover the truth of the brand.
Creativity is only a part of it, but it's an important part, but there is also a need for substance, crafting, and actually from some sheer hard work. Creativity doesn't just drop ready-formed from the sky. As a novelist works and reworks his or her words until they express exactly what he or she is trying to say, ideas and claims need to be explored, substantiated, and narrated, and thinking needs to be demonstrated. There needs to be an element of the obsessive from designers and indeed our clients as well.
The creative process is a kind of songline, telling a story as the journey unfolds. As the Aborigines know through generations, a knowledgeable person is able to navigate across the land by repeating the words of the song. which describe the location of landmarks, waterholes, and other natural phenomena. This is especially important with today's consumers. Take the cohort known as Millennials, for instance, who supposedly represent a break with all we know about marketing, progressive, highly educated, and the first generation to grow up with technology and social media. It seems they are impervious to advertising and are not brand loyal. However, scratched beneath the surface and some interesting insights appear. Millennials prize authenticity over all else. They expect not only to interact with brands on social media, but also to be involved in their creation and ongoing development. And finally, scarred by the financial crisis, they are sick and tired of corporate greed and expect brands to give back to society at large and to local communities. So against all expectations, it would appear that 60% of millennials are actually brand loyal.
So this means that the moment of interaction at the shelf and the tactile experience of the packaging itself is more critical than ever. Ivan Ball from agency Stranger & Stranger has claimed that packaging is the single most important element in the purchasing decision. And our very own Martin Riley has said that it's the one aspect that can create a direct relationship between a brand and a consumer. Critically, craft is not about size. Millennials expect to see craft values from the smallest brands to the biggest. They want to know who has made the liquid and where the ingredients have come from. They want the romance of the brand and they want storytelling. All of these elements should be immediately visible and decodable from the packaging, which makes our job more important than ever. An example of a brand that bears this out is Kraken Rum, which went from 0 to 100,000 cases in 10 months without any marketing support whatsoever.
Finding these stories takes time. By way of an example, here are two brands we worked on, Scapa and Longmorn single malt whiskies, both owned by Pernod Ricard, when in fact, Martin, you were marketing director. In both cases, the journey was not hurried. Scapa's original packaging features a sunset on the sea against rocks and a lighthouse. Longmorn's steep mountain range, perhaps the Cairngorms, a lone Scottish stag and a Celtic cross on the packaging. All that was missing was perhaps bagpipes and a bottle of iron brew. So, however, on visiting the distilleries, we found that there was no lighthouse at Scapa, and the land around Longmorn is as flat as a pancake. This being the case, you have to look more deeply into the history and geography of these brands for essential truths that you can express. In the case of Scapa, we found an astonishingly beautiful protected bay, an equally beautiful palette of blues and greens, and a unique local boat referred to as a yawl. Scapa, in fact, as we discovered, is a Norse term for boat, not a lighthouse. So the resultant expression is one of calm, expressing perfectly the client's brief of a lighter, sharing liquid that can be enjoyed outside as well as inside. To quote the client, Scapa is to be opened, shared, and is a throw the cork in the fire whiskey.
And in the case of Longmorn, we expressed the quiet poetry and reverence of the everyday that we found in its library-like archive. The secret of Longmorn quietly passed down from guardian to guardian over time, as well as the meandering waters of the Spey River, which we reflected in the typography, the water source for the whisky, as it makes its journey to the sea. And then also the brand's emphasis on craftsmanship, which we discovered. And we put this into the soft leather foot so that it gives a quietness to the bottle as it's placed onto the table.
So back to our story and the Bedford Lodge Hotel and Spa in Newmarket. The owner, Mike Keane, who is up here in the audience, approached us about a year ago with the intention of launching a gin to sell exclusively in the hotel, to be called the Bedford Lodge Gin. The hotel has a very rich history, built in around 1820 as a hunting lodge for the 6th Duke of Bedford, who was passionate about horse racing and has passed through many well-known racehorse owners and characters since then. One of those characters, who took up the tenancy in the house, was George Alexander Baird. racehorse owner, breeder, and the most successful amateur jockey of his day. Baird was a notorious character in the 19th century and is commemorated in the name of Bedford Lodge Hotel's award-winning restaurant, The Squires. On either side of the hotel are two of the richest horse owners in the world, Sheikh Mohammed, Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates and the ruler of Dubai, who founded Godolphin Stables as an expression of his lifelong passion for horses and racing. Luca Kamani acquired the historic Bedford House stables next to the hotel in 1976 in his own name, and a ceaseless supply of winners has been the result. All of this was wonderful, but we questioned two major aspects: the potential scope and wider possibilities for the proposed gin, and the naming. Did this limit, i.e. the Bedford Lodge Gin, the sale to the hotel by helping the Bedford Lodge Gin, and perhaps even the name itself?
This is where we get our own back for that awkward question earlier on.
Yeah.
Firstly, the naming, a vital part of every brand and where one can connect with the consumer. And as Bernard said, the Bedford Lodge is a wonderful hotel, but beyond Newmarket, the name could suggest other imagery, whether we like it or not. Bedford and Lodge will have inherent meanings to the consumer, and common culture has a habit of kicking us where it hurts. We regularly use planning tools such as semiotics, which is an academic reading of visual signs and symbols. Or sometimes we just rely on our plain instincts and common sense. And we didn't feel that the Bedford Lodge as a brand name for our new gin was quite right. So we challenged our client about this. And we felt it could eventually limit the potential distribution beyond the hotel, and wondered if there was indeed an even greater potential.
We do think, though, that the Bedford Lodge van, though, is great, and Mike is very proud of this van, and if you ever have an opportunity to go to the hotel, he will have the van pick you up from the station.
So, as we immersed in the hotel, we were progressively drawn in by the culture of racing offered by Newmarket. Remember, neither of us knew anything about racing, and arguably we don't either now. But given time to research and experience, we were able to understand the greater possibilities. Newmarket itself has an incredible history. It dates back to 1174. The Jockey Club there was formed in 1750, and 2 of the 5 British Classics are run here. Charles II, the Merry Monarch, not only built a palace here, but he actually competed in horse racing, and he's the only monarch ever to do so. The area and the racecourse is lined with 5th century dykes built by Anglo-Saxons to defend their settlements against the Romans, and they form the backdrop to the famous Rowley Mile racecourse. So after spending time, and a little bit more time at the hotel, it was impossible also to ignore the morning procession of millions of pounds worth of racehorses making their way up the Bury Road each morning for their exercise at the gallops. Some truly inspiring and very insightful experience.
We also quickly realised that it would not be enough simply to put a label on a pre-existing gin. A new gin would need to be grounded in the locality, and a direct connection with the land would need to be forged. Enter Dr. John Walters, an award-winning master distiller and gin maker from the nearby village of Dunham, just 3 miles south of Newmarket. John runs an independent small batch pot distillery, which he set up some 7 years ago with the sole aim of producing the finest of spirits. His spirits are in fact so good that he supplies gin to the Queen and cucumber spirit to the Marco Pierre White chain of restaurants. The distillery make a diverse range of spirits beyond gin, including vodka from local sugar beet and English single malt, and even a rum. John was involved in the project from the very beginning, as the quality of the gin and its provenance to Newmarket was of paramount importance to the project. After handcrafting several bespoke blends of botanicals, the final recipe was chosen for nothing was rushed. The gin is distilled at 42% and it contains the classic botanicals of juniper, coriander, bay leaf, Seville oranges and almonds, as well as the more unexpected wild horseradish, devil's dyke, orchid petals, wild chives, alfalfa and assorted wild flowers, all forged from Newmarket's own soil and around the course itself. The gin leads with bitter orange and juniper on the nose and a rich perfumed coriander base, giving way to peppered bay and horseradish, with a palate coating finish of petals, chive and marzipan. We do have some samples that you could try later over lunch.
So having realised the potential of the broader story about Newmarket, we now needed to present an iconic image capable of rendering the uniqueness of a horse racing. We explored Edward Muybridge's Horse in Motion and also the 19th century zoetrope, a slotted cylinder which creates the illusion of movement, which is the precursor to modern animation. Our visit to the Jockey Club and Museum inspired us. Again, our client took time to take us around to different places, and we were captivated by the Victorian paraphernalia on show that amused and engaged the viewer. Then there was the Jockey Club itself. Might they even be able to supply us with an image, an iconic image that we could possibly use? We approached them about exploring their archives, and this proved, against all the odds, to be a gamble that was to really pay off.
One image in particular stood out, and we sought permission to enhance the images for our use. It had the energy of the Muybridge photos, but also a relevance to contemporary racing, having won the Irish 2000 Guineas, and more importantly, the Newmarket 2000 Guineas last year, 2015. So back to our story, as this line of inquiry also took us to the heart of horse racing in the UK. As we explained what we were doing, the representatives of the Jockey Club became very excited and told us about the upcoming 350th anniversary of racing at Newmarket this year. Could they become involved, and how might the new gin play a role in horse racing itself? Like the horse, the best bit about every story is when it gains momentum. Sorry about the pun.
No, you're not. Also, very, very important in crafting is what materials could we use that would help us to embody the crafting of our new gin. And a further visit, this time in Newmarket, to the Gibson Saddlery, yielded the fact that there is a specific type of leather named after the town, and also a colour scheme called the Newmarket Blanket. And we were particularly struck by the artistry involved in the manufacturing of the leather saddles. We knew then that these guys had to play a part also in the project. But true craftsmen would not be hurried by crazy deadlines, and for this project we were not willing to compromise, so therefore we had to be very patient. So on to the actual design process itself. And in the first stage, many design directions were explored, and these were reviewed and evaluated with the owners at the Bedford Lodge. We worked as a team and, most importantly, not as an agency and client, both sharing a similar goal for the end product. And finally, we decided we want to embody horse racing as a way of looking at the world. So, might the binoculars of the racing crowd, as well as the lens-like properties of the bottle itself, offer us an opportunity? So we kept going, continuing to explore different ways to tell a single-minded story until we were satisfied that we'd finally backed the winner. Another bad pun.
So we are proud to present, as an exclusive to the Gin Guild today, the launch of the Newmarket Gin.
Trot along.
The packaging takes its inspiration from the Newmarket racecourse, as well as Muybridge's pioneering work in the photographic study of the running horse, creating this quintessential icon brand for the racing community. Using natural magnification and the purity of the gin through the clear flint glass, we created a view of the running horse through the frosted bottle viewed through the lens of the binoculars. An illusion and sense of dimension and movement is created, inspired by the Victorian zoetrope, but given a contemporary twist. The bottle is actually a stock bottle, here demonstrating what can be done to dress and own the shape, with a clever use of frosting, screen printing and labelling.
They're there.
It's across the line.
It's a long race, wasn't it? The bottle is sealed with a solid wooden stopper, and a leather collar provides a final quality seal on the bottle. And the shade of leather is the historic Newmarket tan, which was once used by the traders. Each collar is handmade and stamped in Newmarket by Gibson Saddlers, and they're founded in the early 1900s and now a family-owned company. Gibson's quality and attention to detail earned them the Royal Warrant in 1932 for Her Majesty the Queen Mother, and they presently supply racing colours to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The stitch detailing and metal button echo the craft of leather, riding equipment, and the ribbon tag is the famed Newmarket stripe used for the equine blankets. So, from top to bottom, every element tells part of the story. And I think also, just at this point, it's very, very important with packaging, as we know, it has to work in the hand, it has to work behind the bar. And that was something that was also very important to us, that it attracted that attention. That's a good 2 metre test. But like all good stories, they start to grow.
Excitingly, the connection with the Jockey Club has developed further as we have now created a special release. 350 limited editions have been in bottle to celebrate 350 years of Newmarket racing this year. The club has endorsed the gin, and we've been allowed to add their logo, creating further layering and depth to the brand. Limited edition number 1 will be presented to Her Majesty the Queen when she attends the 350th anniversary celebrations later this year. Presentations cases containing a bottle of this unique gin will be given to winners and trainers as of the forthcoming racing season and ongoing years to come. There will also be 2 tumblers which are hand blown as well inside the case.
So our experience with Newmarket gin bear out our earlier observations about crafting. Great design should go on a journey of discovery and get under the very skin of a place or a culture, as we demonstrated here with the unique backdrop of racing. Naming is key. It can help you tell your story, and that story or narrative is increasingly important. It needs to be ownable and be future thinking. Design should create a dialogue, it should engage and it should delight. We must remember that packaging is tactile and sensuous and something to be held and enjoyed. We must also remember that powerful brands are rooted in truths. Today, our consumers want to see truths in every detail. Finally, and most importantly of all, these things take time to form. They will be, after all, around and enjoyed for years to come. And the Japanese have a great expression for it, the notion of kodawari. We must enjoy our obsessions. We must not be pressured into compromise. The journey should be enjoyed as much as the final destination. So, in summing up, we would never have got this far as we did without the support of the owner, who saw beyond the initial brief to the much bigger opportunity. We cannot stress enough the importance of local authenticating stories. And given the time and the support, a half idea about a hotel turned into a gin that will become part of the very fabric of racing. Big ideas are the sum of lots of smaller parts, carefully layered into a satisfying whole. Detailing is important, from the choice of imagery to the crafting of all the components. And these things should take time. So there is never enough time, but time we must find.
And last but not least, we have a little competition for you. I mentioned earlier that the horse, the photograph, which we got from the Jockey Club, this particular horse, it won the Irish 2,000 guineas last year, and also won the 1,000 guineas at Newmarket. If anyone can name that horse, if you can put your hand up, you will get a bottle of Newmarket gin.
You can be judged on this one, Martin.
You can be judged, but no looking at your iPads or iPhones. That will not be allowed.
Come on, someone can look at their phone.
Red rum.
I was going to say you win a bottle of Brighton gin, but I'm not. Or we could have that maybe.
No, not too many horse racing lovers here.
That's good, we'll share it. The horse was actually called the Glen Eagles. So there we are.
Get this in there then.
Yes. But no, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
listening,
It's great.
and hope you enjoyed our story.
Thank you.